Okay, so thank you for joining us. So my name's Simon Favag, and I'm joined by Simon Davidson, one of our senior project managers. And the plan for today is to look at report design techniques in Sage 200. There's going to be some training on some of the key areas we find that come up through support calls and the like areas around sort of email settings and so on, but we'll come to that. Just very quickly, experience, many of you will know us from dealing with us through products and such that we supply and work with yourselves on. And so we drive business efficiencies through digital transformation. And the way we achieve that is through our 4 key pillars. If you could go to the next slide, Simon, please. So there's 4 main pillars that our business concentrates on. Some of you might deal with us on one of these or possibly 2 of these, but as I say, there's 4 key areas. ERP, which is kind of where we're concentrating today with the Sage 200 Report Designer. CRM, there's a CRM module within Sage 200. Some of you may or may not use that. Cloud and managed IT. And that's what we see as digital transformation. It's combining these sort of pillars together, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe all of those, to give you a total solution that transforms your business, allows you to work productively, effectively, and so on. And so if we hand over to the next slide, Simon's going to cover the key areas on the training today. As I say, it's all about the Sage 200 Report Designer, and I will hand over to Simon. One thing I'll mention, if we can, any questions, if you could pop those up in the chat box, and we'll get to those at the end if that's okay. So just fire up any questions that spring to mind throughout the session, and we'll cover all of those at the end of the session, if that's all right. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Simon.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me, Simon?
I can hear you fine, yeah.
Perfectly, fantastic. I wasn't too sure there. I thought I was by myself. That's okay. Right, so thanks for everyone spending a bit of time out from your day to spend some time with us. So we're going to cover 3 main areas in Sage 200 today. So we're going to look at configuring email settings, data letters, and report field formatting. So this is around report designer techniques. Now, we offer additional training, obviously, in Report Designer, so that can take place normally over 1 or 2 days. So what we're presenting today is a very, very, very cut down version. We're just focusing on these 3 key areas because these things typically come up in support calls and how do I do type questions. So Report Designer techniques, yeah, how do I email documents? They could be letters, they could be invoices, credit notes, and so forth. So emailing is very much more a topic which is more relevant today, given the environment that we're unfortunately facing at the moment. So going down to the post office is a bit more logistically challenging these days. So emailing is, the best way to go. So how do I email documents? We're going to show you the processes involved. We'll start off with the basics. And we'll get you to a stage that you're going to feel comfortable going into your system and setting up the email settings. Also, the second part is going to go and cover off data letters. We're actually going to run through how to produce data letters. And they're basically around chasing up debt. So it's very much a relevant topic, again, for the current environment, because obviously people are going to take a little bit longer to pay, understandably. And thirdly, as I said before, we're going to look at some field formatting. So how do I edit my data letters? How do I change some content just to tweak things around a little bit? So let's crack on. Now, first of all, before we actually get into what I call under the bonnet, we're going to need some information from your IT to work out what are your email settings, because do you use Outlook? Do you send emails or want to send emails straight out, bypassing Outlook itself? Now, typically we find that clients in general use Outlook to send emails, because after all, that's what typically Sage supports. So we're going to look at that. So you need to have a chat to your IT, but we'll also cover off how you do this in Report Designer. Now, Report Designer, I'm not too sure how familiar you are, but we'll cover off the basics. Report Designer is used to edit your documents. And a document could be an invoice, it could be a statement, a data letter, and so forth. Report Designer is used for all of those types of documents. Now, when configuring email settings, you've got to configure each report. So the key point there is each report, because you just can't set up one and then expect all of the others to work as required. So you need to be familiar, obviously, where to find your reports. Where do you go in Sage? Where do you go on your Sage server to find the individual reports you need to edit? We're going to cover off how to find this location, where to find your reports and letters and layouts. And we're going to cover off where to find that information. So you can actually avoid having to go through your IT, because obviously they'll have a lot on the go at the moment. So you can actually find that out yourself, especially if you're a Sage system administrator. Now, if you are a Sage system administrator, you can find out the name of your Sage 200 server just simply by loading up Sage 200 system administration. So I'll actually show you what that looks like. Sorry, I'll just go back a couple of slides here. And let's just go back to, oops. Here we go. So how do I find out the name of my Sage server? So let's actually open up Sage 200 administration. You'll have a shortcut. If you're a Sage 200 administrator, you'll have a shortcut on your desktop like this. Just double click on that. It'll just take a few moments to start. And we're going to find the name of our server. So click on the company's option on the left-hand side and have a look at the server name. The server name will be the first part just before the // And in my case, it's a demo system. It's got a very odd sort of name, but that's my name, my Sage server. So it's starting with Win and it finishes with CN. So that's the name of the Sage server there. Now, if you do want to double click on this, it will open up the properties for your company, Sage company, and you can actually copy the name of your server from here. Okay. Don't change anything on the screen because it may stop your Sage from working, but just copy this first part to clipboard. So right click and copy. And it's useful just to fire up Notepad. Every Windows type system will actually have a Notepad installed, and just paste the name of your server into the Notepad. We're going to use that later on to browse for the files. Okay, let's close this properties window down. So far we've actually achieved one thing. We've actually found out what the name of our Sage server is. So let's just flick back to our PowerPoint so we know exactly what we're up to. So we've actually covered off this first part here. What's the Sage server name? Now, before we start looking at techniques or how to edit a report, I really need to cover off one important part, is where you find that information. Where do you find your reports? Where do you find your letters? And where do you find your layouts? Each site can be set up a little bit differently, but Sage follows a set routine in terms of how it actually searches for your documents. Now, first of all, the general structure is, it will start off looking for the name of the document. It could be an invoice statement, a statement, a letter. It will start off what we call the company location. And if it can't find the name of the document that it's trying to print or email, it will move on to the custom location. Now, failing that, it will actually move then to the default location and try and find the document that way. So if you ever find or see a message on the screen along the lines of Sage can't find the document, then the chances are that the document is not actually in one of those three locations. So I'm going to cover off how you browse to that, and this is where the name of the server comes into play. Because in Windows Explorer, we'll actually need to search for the Sage server, and we're going to browse to the Sage location and find reports and layouts and letters. Now, within those locations, Sage looks for things in certain folders, and if it's a report, it will search for the report within subfolders. And that's what I mean by that statement there. It's broken down by module. So if it's trying to find a nominal ledger report, it will go to the nominal ledger folder within the report's location and try and find the report from there. Now, just a key point, and this is a key design consideration, is that if the name of the report is the same as the standard Sage report or layout, Sage will run your customized version instead of the default. So this technique is what we follow or use if we want to customize, for example, a VAT report, a reconciliation report, or maybe an aged debtor statement report, and we want it to run in place of the standard default report. Okay, so the key thing is keep the report name the same. If you change it by one character, add a dash or an extra S or another word, then that's deemed to be different, and Sage will basically not find it, and it will run the standard report. And what I want to mention now is not a lot of sites have the standalone version of Report Designer installed. Typically, when I set up a Sage site, I'd like to do that. I like to install what I refer to as a standalone version of Report Designer, because that allows you to double click on a report or a layout within the Windows Explorer, which I think is now called File Explorer under Windows, and you can double click on it and it will launch up Report Designer from your browsing session in Windows Explorer. Now, if you don't have the standalone version of Report Designer installed, then don't fret. Contact support, ask them to give you a hand, and basically to install Report Designer standalone is a 5-minute job. So I'm going to show you how to do that in terms of running the standalone version, but I'm also going to show you how to access Report Designer through Sage in what I call the standard way. And we're also going to cover off editing letters email settings, because after all, that's one of the key objectives of today. And yeah, let's crack on. So let's go and edit. Well, let's actually browse for the report in the system. So we copied the name of the server before, didn't we? We actually found out the server name is this. So I'm going to copy it to my clipboard. So from here, I'm just going to go into Windows Explorer or File Explorer. I keep on using the old traditional approach. So 2 backslashes. Control V is paste. And if it's a short name or a proper name, what I call a proper name, for example, Sage, then just type that in and enter. You'll actually see Sage. Now that will be called Sage on every site that runs Sage 200. Okay, let's double click. So what you'll find is a series of folders, and one folder in particular is of interest for today's session. That's called reporting. So let's go down the list here and double click on reporting. This folder contains the 3 key folders that Sage will look in when it tries to run a report, a layout, or a letter. And I'll describe each one in turn. Remember the structure. It starts off, it searches for the report under company. It then goes to custom. And then if it still can't find it, it goes to default. Now, I haven't explained yet, but default contains all the standard installed versions or documents that are copied to your Sage server when we install Sage for the very first time. Now, you should never change any default documents that are stored in the default location. Now, don't get me wrong, you can still use a default report as a base starting document, and that is always my advice when starting off, is use a standard report that's been installed and edit that to customize it. But don't save it back down on top of the standard default report. Because if you ever need to go back to the standard one, you can't because you've overwritten it. And secondly, yeah, always leave the default reports as is, general rule. So, as I said before, company, custom, and default. Let's look at company. Now, for those sites that have all their reports or layouts or letters stored under the company folder, then this will be relevant for yourself. Now, you're going to find out by browsing to your reporting location, as we are doing here, you're going to find out where the documents are stored on your site. So if you are keeping up with my training, and I'll certainly encourage you, if you can, to load up Sage 200 on your machine, and I'll just give you a few moments to do that if you wish. And you may already know, while you're loading up Sage, where or what the name of your Sage server is. In that case, you've got a head start on the rest of us. Okay, pop into Windows Explorer for me, so if you are following, and browse for your reporting location. So put in the name of your file, your Sage server. So just like that, enter, double click, and then down to reporting. So hopefully you're up with Sage on that, and double click on company. Now, the companies listed in this folder have to be exactly the same name as your Sage company. So remember, when you start Sage, you're presented with a list of companies to log into. That list is the list in the Sage 200 System Administration area. Click on the Companies tab again, and you'll see your list of companies. Now, the company name in the left-hand column under Company Name is the name of the folder that I've just shown you in Windows Explorer. Now, it needs to be exactly the same name, because if it's not, Sage won't find any documents and it will move on to the custom location and then default location if it still can't find the layout or report. So in this example here, I purposely set up a folder called Sage 200C Demo Data. Now, for the purposes of today, I'm using Sage 200's Demo Data, so it's not client specific. And the name of the company is Sage 200C Demo Data. Now, within this folder, you will have three, or could have three subfolders. I have, because I wanted to show you the process. I've got a folder in here called Layouts. Now, in this folder will be any layouts that you've customized, and in my example, there's none. And the reason why is I don't have them stored in this location. Okay, so let's go back one step. Back to this folder here. So letters. I don't have any letters in this folder either, because on purpose I didn't put them there. But if I had a need to have company specific letters or layouts, then obviously I can customize and install them in each company folder. So let's go back into Demo Data and Reports. Now, the Reports folder has a whole bunch of different subfolders, and they're split by the module within Sage 200. Now, if you customize, for example, a VAT report, then that would typically go under the nominal folder. So when Sage runs the VAT report within the system, it will check for this nominal folder, see if there's a report by the same name, and if there is, it will run it instead of the standard report. Again, for the purposes of today, I haven't actually stored them here. So let's go back up to this folder here. So by having a company specific folder in this case here 200C demo data, it allows you to have company-specific layouts. In other words, layouts for company 1 can be different, or would be different, to layouts for company number 2. Likewise, you can have a different set of letters for company 2. And the same principle applies to reports. So having your documents or customized documents, and by document I mean a layout, a letter, or a report, under the company folder just gives you that flexibility to run very bespoke reports, layouts, or letters for each company. Great if you've got a test company situation, or you've got very distinct companies with very different branding requirements, in which case I would tend to recommend to clients you have your layouts under a company folder. But just to be awkward and difficult today, I haven't followed that approach because I don't have any specific branding requirements. Let's go back to the reporting folder just by clicking on reporting at the top of the page. So ignore criteria, I'm not interested in that folder right now. I'm going to click on custom. So custom, I've got a whole bunch of different folders there, but the one I want to point out for today's exercise is the folder, well, 3 folders actually, called reports, letters, and layouts. These 3 folders can store your custom layouts, letters, and reports. Now, anything stored in those 3 locations will print regardless of the company you are logged into. So the key here is use the custom locations, layouts, letters, and reports only if you are happy to have the same report, layout, or letters to run across any of the companies that you are using. Now, if you've got a test company or a training company, then just be aware if you're using the custom location, you could be potentially printing out a test transaction, a test layout, or a test invoice based on demo data or test data, and it will look exactly like your live documentation. Sometimes it's a little bit dangerous. Okay, so just be conscious about that. So let's have a look at layouts. Okay, I can see a number of different custom layouts in this folder. And what I've done for today's training exercise is I'm using Experience's default pack of layouts. These ones were customized with certain fields, layouts, and branding logos, and it's just to sort of make the demo a little bit more, I guess, polished. So that's the layouts folder. Let's move back to custom. Letters. Letters are debtor letters or customer letters. They are credit control letters that you can generate from Sage 200, and these letters will basically follow a set structure, and they will be produced with certain text in there saying please pay, and the next letter, the second one, might be a little bit stronger, the third one is a little bit stronger, and the fourth one typically will be the strongest type letter, and that one will typically mention lawyers or solicitors and so forth. So these letters will be, I'll be showing you how to produce those. So it's almost like a bit of a credit control training session as well in a way. But these letters are quite useful. So anything that is actually a Sage letter, they'll be actually stored in this location. You do not store things like invoices, statements, or any type layout within this folder. Layouts must go under the layouts folder here. Okay. So reports. You remember this folder has lots and lots of folders, subfolders here. POP, price book, purchase, sales, nominal. Okay, these are any customized reports that you want to run that have the same name as the Sage 200 report. That's typically what I would recommend you use these folders for. Now, some sites we've gone to, they ask for bespoke Sage reports that don't have a default or standard version of Sage. They're ones that we've created specifically for customers' requirements. So in that case, sometimes you'll see a subfolder on here with the name of the company. For example, if your company name was John Smith Limited, you could have a folder in there, and any default, oh sorry, well, I did not use the word default, any specific customized reports would be in there for that company. So have a look for that folder in your custom reports folder. If you've got one there, then you should be able to find any custom reports in that location. So again, any slight variations or tweaks to standard Sage 200 reports, store them with exactly the same name in the relevant module. So for example, if it's the VAT report that prints at the end of a VAT return in Sage, then store it with the same name in this folder called nominal. Good stuff. Okay, I think you're all happy with that. Hopefully you are. If you've got any questions along the way, please jot them down, as Simon said, in the chat window, and we'll certainly do what we can to answer them at the end. Okay, so let's go back to the previous slide. And we've talked about layouts, reports, where they're stored, and I mentioned about the standalone version of Report Designer. Have a chat to our support team if you need that installed, and they'll show you how to do that. Start up Report Designer through Sage 200. So how do I do that? Okay, first of all, launch up Sage 200, and hopefully you're all seasoned Sage 200 experts. Basically, launch up Sage 200, you've got the little cog symbol at the top. That looks like a cog symbol, and pop in there, and you've got an option here called Run Sage Report Designer. Let's click on there. Right, the first thing I need to point out is that by launching up Sage Report Designer from that company that I'm logged into means that any previews of reports or layouts or letters will be based on the company that I'm logged into. Right. So back again, cog symbol, Sage Report Designer, done. So here is the company, the folder structure for reports: company, custom, and default. Remember my Windows Explorer view? Yeah, that looks pretty similar. In fact, that's the same structure. Okay, so I can go into company and I can see my layouts folder. I can see my letters and my reports. Now I've got no customized reports in there. If I go down to custom and go to my layouts folder, let's click on the little plus symbol next to layouts, and that will now list all the customized layouts that I've got stored in that folder. So that's actually the same as if I went back to my Windows location, back to Sage, back to reporting, back to custom, layouts, and there we go. Letters. There's my data letter 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the key thing is what we said we're going to show you was how to configure email settings. So what I'm going to use as an example is going to be a data letter. Now I'm going to pick number 1, data letter number 1. Double click and it will launch up the letter within Report Designer. Let's maximize that window, and on the right hand side we've got the properties window or sub-window showing different elements or attributes within this report. Also, really need to show you, under View, you've got an option here called Properties. So, beg your pardon. Properties is what I was looking at before. Let's just click back on Report Explorer. That's actually what I wanted to add as well. So the Report Explorer shows you a graphical view of how your report is structured. We won't be able to go into too much detail about that today, because obviously that's going to take up a bit too much time, but that will show you all the different elements or sections within the report. The top level is the name of the report, and page 1 is the top level. Each page has a page header, each page has a page footer, and typically you'll have a detailed section, and depending on the type of report, you'll have a series of headers. Now this header is for a section, and a section is just an area within the report. Each section or area has a header and it has a footer. Okay. Now you see when I'm clicking on the headers and footers within the Report Explorer, you see that it's highlighting the different area within my report designer. Okay, let's just do that again. Okay. So let's just give you a very quick high-level view of the Report Explorer. Now, let's go and crack into with the email settings. Now, you can access the email settings within a report a number of ways. You can go here, Report Email Settings, or you can go up to the top level of the report, and you've got an option here on the right hand side, top right, email options, and see the little 3 dots towards the right of that field. Click on the 3 dots and we'll see the same screen as we saw earlier. Now, setting up the email settings. General rule is do not leave your report, if you intend to email a report or a layout or a letter, do not leave it set to entire report. Why? If your report includes information that is that belongs or shows information from different customers, different suppliers, different accounts, then one person will receive that information. So if it's a customer statement, you would be sending out all your statements to one customer. Now, I'm sure that you don't really want to do that, and I wouldn't want to see you do it either. So do never leave that set to entire report. General rule is pick the highest group you can. So click on the little down arrow next to here, and I'll be picking group number 2. Now, group number 2 is actually a section within the report, and that is actually to do with customer accounts. And group 2, customer accounts, is actually showing information for customer account number. So this group is actually splitting the information by customer account number. In other words, it will be emailing out or generating the report split by customer account number. So therefore, it makes sense that I would pick this as a group, but also bear in mind that I want to pick the highest group setting I can. Now, you may need to have a play around if it's, excuse me, if it's a report that you haven't emailed before, to look at the grouping or the right group to pick. But for a statement or a customer type report like this, then group number 2 by customer account number is the way to go. So let's pick that. Now, you want this to go to a customer contact. So pick 2. And I'm going to click on Add because I want to build up. I want to add, build up who or the email address I want to send this letter to. And generally speaking, it's going to be SL customers accounts. So click on the little plus, move down to contact email address. Double click on that. That will move that selection over to the window. Click on OK. And now I've specified that contact email address to use. So that email letter will go to that contact email address. Click on OK. Now, subject. I could just type in there overdue letter. Yep, that's great, but that's just going to say overdue letter. You could specify your company name, or you can build an extra smarts into how that subject name is arrived at. So I can click on subject, and by putting on plus, I can add an additional fields to this, so it will be dynamically created every time it runs. And I might want to add something else to this subject line. So I could put a date in there, I could put a company name, I could put the name of the customer's account. Let's give that a go. And let's go to SL customers accounts, because that's where the information is stored about a customer's account. And I will pick the name field. So let's just make this window a bit bigger and keep going down. And the hardest thing with a report designer is actually knowing where the information is stored. And what is customer account name called? It's actually called customer account name, ironically. So double click on that, and there we go. So the subject line will become overdue letter dash space, and then it will add the name of the customer. Okay. Click on OK. Done. Now, send the report as attachment with the following message body. In English, that means what do you want to type in the email of the email to the customer? So that's the standard text. I would tend to say something along the lines of maybe dear accounts payable. If this is an overdue letter, this will be going to their accounts payable department. Please find attached our overdue letter. Finance. Finish up how you want your email body to read, and attachment format PDF. You've got other options, but typically we recommend PDF. And file name, report description. That will give it the name of whatever you've called your data letter. That may not be entirely appropriate, but you can change this and add or change it around. So report description, you might actually just have text in here saying overdue letter dash space plus, and I'm going to add the customer's account name to the file name. So it's the same thing as we did with the email subject line before. So we know that's called customer account name. And let's make that just a little bit bigger. So let's add that, done. Okay. Now, this is the thing you need to check with your IT, just to make sure that you're using Outlook. And there's a section here called Microsoft Outlook, and typically that's a lot of what our clients use. So in this case here, I'm assuming that you're using Outlook. And I recommend to save emails to Mailbox. That will give you a draft email, which you can then open up in Outlook, add any personal touches to the email, like how was your last trip away, Bob, and then just send it off from Outlook. If you send it immediately, there is obviously a chance that it may not be right. You might have forgotten to change your letter around. And I think until you get this practiced, it pays just to save them to the mailbox to begin with. So save to mailbox, yes, and done. So that's our email settings entered. They're only entered for that one letter. Now, obviously, I've taken a bit of time to go through how to set them. Typically, it won't take you that long to do yourself. You would just simply open up all the letters, for example, and do them one after the other. Okay, don't forget to save your layout down, letter down. So click on the save, and that will now save the changes. Super. That's how you change your email settings. If you've got a standalone version of Report Designer installed, and I have just for the purposes of today's training, then you can actually load up Report Designer straight away from the Windows Explorer. So it's just like double-clicking a file on your system. So let's just show you how to do that. And I'm going to go to Reporting, Custom, and then Letters. Double-click on Report Letter, and it will launch up Report Designer and the letter itself. So that's the advantages of having standalone Report Designer installed. So if you haven't got it installed, if you find that you go into Windows Explorer and you don't have that little picture symbol next to the name of the layout or letter, then the chances are you don't have the standalone Report Designer installed. Have a chat to our support to get some help on how to install that. So that's the advantages of standalone Report Designer. Okay, let's pop back to our PowerPoint. And I've shown you how to change the email settings, so I think we can put a big tick on that one. And data letters. Now, time-wise, what I'm going to do is let you just have a quick read of this online, because obviously time's moving on it just a little bit. And so basically, I've got all this set up. So if you do need a copy of this PowerPoint at the end, please let us know and we can send one to you. And data letters is just another type of Report Designer document, and very, very useful for generating overdue letters to overdue accounts, customers' accounts. Okay, let's actually run those. So back to Sage 200, Sales Ledger, Reports, Credit Control, and data letters. As I said in the PowerPoint, the data letters work on the aging period set up in your system, and the data letters, as you saw, are preset Report Designer documents that you can amend, and let's run them off to have a look. When you run the data letters, the standard ones, you'll get these sorts of criteria showing, which you can change. You can actually say, I want to run these letters for balances up to a certain amount or below a certain amount. And I can show letter messages as well. Now, I don't have any set up at the moment, and I'm just going to run these for all balances overdue. Let's click on OK. And the letters will produce if you've got any debts that are overdue. And it's based on outstanding date, and balance due date. And in this case here, it's pulled up a number of documents. Now, page 1 or 2, obviously this letter, we can see that we've got a whole bunch of letters showing. If I minimize them all, each of the 4 letters will be produced separately, and each one may have 1 or 2 pages or even more, depending on the number of overdue accounts. Now, let's minimize all those. And I want to now show you how to mend the formatting of a field within Report Designer. So let's pick this letter here. I think it's probably Looking at the wording of the text, the language used, I would say it's either number 3 or number 4 based on the severity or the warning. So it gives me a bit of a heads up as to what letter this is. And also, to be honest, it tells me at the top of the screen anyway. So debtor letter number 4, period 4. Okay. Say that I want to amend the account number €1. Okay. And got a number of choices how to do that. First of all, I can click on edit at the top, and edit will take me into the report designer. Now, a key important thing to be aware of: what you are editing is not your customized layout, letter, or report. It's just the one that the system has actually produced. I'll explain this by example. If I click on File, Save As, it hasn't got a name. It doesn't know what the name is. Okay. And yeah, you need to know, ideally you need to go into the letter the proper way. But sometimes I do go in this way if I have to. If I know, for example, that I've just edited report or letter number 4, then I can just obviously click on letter 4, level 4, and click on save, because I know I'm overwriting the correct document. But if you've got any doubts, do not overwrite the current document. Okay, I've just saved here, and it's, do you want to replace it? Yes, I do, and done. Now, how to change a field? Okay, there's lots of things you can do in Report Designer, but changing the formatting of a field is pretty straightforward. You click on that field, and it will show the properties within this, properties for this field you've clicked on. So I'm just going to pull the properties pane out a little bit more from the left-hand side, so the GoToWebinar doesn't cover it up. And I'm just, see, I'm clicking on these fields here, and it's showing me the properties here on the right-hand side. Let's move. That's better. Okay, so let's move up to the top. I've clicked on customer account number. That's the field, and that's what prints out the customer account number on the produced letter. So in here, I've got formatting option on the right-hand side here. Click on the right there, see the 3 dots? Click on the dots, and it takes you to the formatting. Is it a short date? Is it time formatting? No, neither one of those. Is it a value? Is it, do you want to change the maximum decimals or minimum decimals? And any filling, does it need to be padded? So these formatting changes, you would do these typically if you want to limit the number of decimal places that's coming up. Now, obviously with the customer account number has no decimals, so I would tend to have this sort of field if it's a number set to 0 anyway. This is not a date and time field, so I wouldn't be wanting to set anything in with that respect. Click on OK once you've made your changes to the decimals. If it's a change of formatting, for example, the font, or should I say the text style, then above here, see that little arrow there? If I click on there, that gives me a breakdown of all the different attributes for that text. Is it font number 10? Actually, no, it's 9 for that. So I can just overwrite that and change it here. Tab to get off that field. If you want to take off the bold, at the moment it's set to true, and true means yes, it's bold. So I can double click on this and it changes it to false. Double clicking on here changes it back to true. Now, I could change the alignment. I can change whether it's italic or not italic, but you get the idea. So I've actually expanded this out. Just go through that again for you. Click on the left click on the little arrow, left-hand side, expand this out, and then you can change the attribute you need to. Now, also, you can left click on the 3 dots next to text style, and that gets you the all the settings in one place. So Arial 10, bold, underline. No, I don't want underline. Left align, and so forth. I've now changed the formatting and text style of the customer account number on this letter. This is one field of many, and that just gives you a bit of a flavor as to how you can change the formatting. Now, don't forget to save the changes when you're finished. So click on the little save symbol. And if you need to change some of the text of the letter, then double click on the, see the little dots around the letter contents? That's a text box. And if you double click on it, it allows you to highlight and change certain text within that. Now, you can also change the text another way. On the left-hand side, you've got dynamic help screen. And because I've highlighted that block of text, it shows me what text is showing there, and I can actually change the contents here as well. For some of you, it may be a little bit easier to edit this way. But whatever way you use, the same outcome, and you may be wanting to change the text here. So incurred cost, I don't know who spelled incurred that way, but I would spell it like that. So once you've made your change to the text, then you can click off the field, which is a text box, and that change is now taken. Again, don't forget to click on the little save button here and save the changes down on the screen. Okay. Other things to be aware of, just at a very high level, you can move fields around. So for example, if I wanted to move customer account number just to the right, just a little bit, then click on the field, left click on the field, use your right arrow button and just click it a few times and you can move it over. Now, if you're like me and once you get as report designer, it sort of becomes a little bit addictive, is that you look at the layout or the report or letter and go, actually, no, it's not quite aligned. So you want things to look good because this is what's sent to the customer. Then obviously highlight the fields, and this is how you align things up in the right way. So left click on the first field, keep your finger down on the control button on your keyboard, left click on the second field. That's now clicked, well, I've selected two fields. Then go up to format at the top of the page screen, alignment, and top. That means it will align the fields, make sure the top of the fields are perfectly aligned for you. Done. So that is alignment, very, very useful in making sure things look good. So let's left click on there again, move that over just a little bit. Save that down, done. So now I've now completed my changes. Let's close my letter down and let's run off those letters. Today was about emailing or report design techniques, and we've changed the email settings. It'd be a little bit wrong of me not to show you the emailing in practice. So let's give it a whirl. So let's generate the letters. You generate them to screen first, okay? Have a look at them, make sure they look correct. They have the right text, there's no spelling, there's no typos, that type of thing. Now, if you are happy with the contents of the letter, then you can actually click on email. Now, this is a very good error. Very good error in the respect that for training, you should never see this when running off an emailed report. As I said before, you do not want to send the entire report to one customer. So this is a very good training error to encounter, because I can show you how to fix that. But do never run a report or email something out if you see this error. So click on no. So I'm going to fix this problem This is data letter 4 that has this error. So I'm going to click on Edit, Report Email Settings. So Report Email Settings. Entire report, pick group number 2. It's split by customer account number, which is correct. So each customer is going to be sent their own individual email, which is what I would want. Subject, I'm just going to type in a very brief note here because obviously time is limited. I'm just going to set this to Outlook, and that's a very basic email setting entered. Plus, I should actually change this text. Click on OK, done. File, save as. That's number 4, save. Okay, let's try email again. Oh, I've got a problem with number 3. Again, very good training error. I don't want to email the entire report, big no-no. So click on no, and I'm just going to go and click on edit. Now, by the way, the letter number is number 3. So edit, report email settings, group number 2, and this group splitting SL customer account, so customer account number. That means every customer is going to be emailed separately, which is what I want, and you typically go for the highest group number anyway, so that's fine. Subject, let's say I've actually entered my correct subject in here, and again you can customize it and produce this dynamically. Just for speed, I'm just typing that information in. Outlook, okay. Let's save that down. So file, save as, and this is data letter number 3, and select save and replace yes. Let's try emailing again. Oh, I've got a problem again. I don't want to email the whole thing, so click on no, and I'm going to go back into edit. Now, by the way, it's letter number 2. So by the end of this training session, you'll definitely be familiar with how to create your or enter your email settings. And if you're ever unsure what group to pick, always go for the highest group, and just make sure that the split customer account number means that no one's going to receive any wrong information. Okay, so let's save that down. That's actually letter number 2. So what do you reckon? Do you think we've actually nailed the complete email settings now? Or I think possibly we have. So let's run it again. Let's, in this case, accept all the standard settings or criteria. Super. And it'll only take a few moments to run. And let's click on email. So something's not quite right, is it? So let's have a look at that. Send the entire report as attachment. No. And that's letter number 4. Now, this is a good exercise where I've actually changed the settings. And in this case here, I actually need to log out of Sage. Sage will, what we call cache or obtain all the settings when it starts up. And because I've changed things like the reports, email settings, you really need it to start from scratch again. So I'm just going to close Sage down and let's rerun Sage. And I'm going to close down Report Designer as well. So let's go back to our sales ledger letters. Let's run them. And let's email them. And I did get that error message before, and that's a no-no. I should never click on entire report, but in this case here, I'm just going to show you the emailing. Click on OK. And basically, let's have a look at Outlook. So what the system will do is generate a draft email. Now, they will be stored in your drafts folder. So let's just have a look at Outlook for a moment. And typically, you would go into your drafts folder and obtain your email document from there. So what I'm going to do is show you. Let's pick up letter number 1, and I'm just going to email this one individually. So click on email, and that's basically taken the email settings from your contact and it's produced a draft email. And that draft email looks like that. So you got your email address from the contact and overdue letter, Better Kitchens, and it's got the letter. Obviously, you want a bit more informative text in there than that, but the overdue letter is a PDF, and there we go. So that is how it stores. It will store as a draft. You just go in there and tweak the information. Now, what I would recommend you do is make sure you don't have the standard default report designer text in there, and let's actually have a look at that letter. Browsing back to my Sage folder, so back to server name, Sage, reporting, and custom, letter, and letter number 1. Report, email settings, and that looks fine. And the text, dear accounts payable, ... and there we go. That setting there, save emails to mailbox, that's what's getting it to store it in the drafts folder in Outlook. So let's just preview that. I'm just going to click on preview button in the bottom right hand corner. Click on OK. There's my draft letter, and emailing actually is not an option when you preview the report. So I'm actually going to have to go back to edit mode. So click on the little pencil mark, bottom right hand corner, save my changes down, and run it from Sage. So let's run it again, data letters. Okay. And I want to email off the Euro trading letter here. So I'm going to, from this previewed letter, click on email, and it's still complaining that the settings are not right. So I'd have to have another look at that. But I'm just click on no.
Period 4, Simon. You need to go to the letter period 1.
Yeah, this is actually 4, isn't it? So let's go back to the 4 mark. So I'm just going to go back to Sage, reporting, custom, letters, and number 4. Thought I changed it before, obviously I haven't. So let's go back into report, email settings, and that's actually set. Interesting. So it shouldn't actually ask you, shouldn't come up with that warning because I actually have changed the individual report. And I'm just going to run those again. And pick number 4 and email this letter. Still wants to say it's not configured. Well, this actually is configured.
Due to the constraints of time, let's do you want to do an addendum to this and just say what the what the issue is with that particular
yes,
report.
exactly.
But hopefully we've given you an idea of how to set up the email settings and where to find the right reports and which level to go in and so on. If anybody's got any questions, please feel free to pop those up now, and we'll certainly try and answer those. And I popped up on the chat window, but I forgot to mention up at the start, we will send a recording of this session out to you guys, so you can sort of recover what we've gone through today, and can also make the PowerPoint available as well. But as I say, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to answer them now, and or ask them now, sorry, and we will certainly try and answer them if we can. It looks like possibly no questions coming through, and I'm slightly conscious that we've overrun slightly. So any questions that do come up, I say feel free to drop me an email, myself or Simon an email, and we'll certainly answer those there and then. But yeah, thank you all for attending today. Really appreciate you all taking the time. We're going to send out just a Microsoft form afterwards, just asking for some feedback on the session. It'd be great if you could spend a couple of moments just answering a couple of quick questions about the session. It just helps us shape the future sessions we're going to do, so the more feedback you can provide. Oh, I've just got one question come through. Is the ability to do what we have been just shown impacted by where Sage is stored?
No, it's even if you're accessing Sage Report Designer through Sage, you can still carry out the changes.
I think, just for clarity on that, I believe Mark is using Sage 200 online, the hosted version.
Right, okay, right.
But I think you can still set up all the email settings and such for the hosted version as well, as far as I'm aware. Is that correct, Simon?
To be honest, I haven't actually looked at that area before, to be honest. I'd have to have a look at it and come back to you on that.
We'll confirm that. I'm fairly confident you can, and there's no issues, and you can follow the same path. Yeah, so we'll answer the question. So yeah, no, I'm pretty sure you can do. We will just confirm that by email. So we'll just check with a colleague who's a bit of a whiz on the online version and just confirm that, Mark. But yeah, I think you can basically do everything you've just seen today. Jolly good. Okay, thank you guys. I really appreciate you all taking the time. I know it's a Monday morning, but it's is appreciated. I'll pop out that feedback form. As I say, if you can spare a couple of moments to give a bit of feedback, that'd be much appreciated, and we will send the recording to follow. But any questions, obviously you've covered quite a few areas today. We'll also just feedback what the issue is with that letter 4, just so for clarity, just so we know. I'm sure it'll be something or nothing, but we'll confirm that. But yeah, thank you again, guys. We appreciate you all taking the time, and enjoy the rest of your day and week. Thanks all.